Mike, I'm so excited to welcome you on the podcast. Thanks a lot for joining. And I'm so excited really because you have grown and sold two multi-million pound recruitment companies completely from scratch. And even further, you've consulted for over 100 clients to help them grow their agencies. So I cannot wait to learn from your experience and learn about the insights from building those recruiting agencies. So why don't you tell us what was it like? I mean, you I'm sure we're going through lots of ups and downs, and eventually you exited those companies. So what was the experience like?
Well, they were two very different companies, really. Oh, by the way, thank you for inviting me on the show, Mike. Absolute pleasure to be here. The first business we started in 1989, and I'd only been in recruitment for 6 months. Before that, I'd been a computer programmer and an analyst, so I don't really know anything about recruitment, and I didn't know anything about business either. But that journey was quite interesting because there were three of us who started the business, and then the senior guy, the one that actually knew what he was doing, was killed in a car accident 18 months in. It was a terrible thing. And so I had to take over with no preparation, no succession plan. It was nothing. One day I went to work and he was there, and the next day I went to work and he was gone forever. And so that was a really kind of in the deep end experience. And I made a lot of mistakes. I did some terrible things because I just didn't know what I was doing half the time, but managed to come through that. And in the 90s was a great time to grow businesses. We were in IT recruitment, in contract recruitment at a time when it was exploding. So it was really easy, I think, to do business. The second time around was different because we'd sold to an American company and I stayed there for a couple of years after the sale. Two of the guys that used to work for me came to see me and said, we're going to do this thing and we'd like you to come in with us. And I thought, yeah, because I really hate what I'm doing at the moment, which was nothing. I'd retired. It was horrible. So I went into business with them. But I love working with those guys, by the way. I absolutely loved it. A company called Crimson. But I kind of lost the desire to be a recruiter, really. I don't know, it wasn't ticking any boxes, so I began to move across to other areas within the business. And I left there in 2010. I remained a shareholder, so I was a sleeping partner. And then they sold it to Harvey Nash, which is a UK listed company, I think in 2017. So I really wasn't a major part of that business after the first 4 or 5 years. They did it all and they grew it. But I learned different things from both of those experiences, really. And also the things that were common. We were talking about selling a business earlier, and there are certain things, 12 boxes you need to tick if you're going to sell your company. And if you don't tick the boxes, you're probably not going to sell. One in particular, you've got to be able to tick it. And by luck, because we didn't plan it, we had no idea, just dumb luck, we ticked all of those boxes twice. And so, different experiences. Not one I'd like to repeat, to be honest with you, but nonetheless, it was an experience, I suppose, worth having in the end.
That's just so cool. And then now I'm so curious about all these boxes. But before we dive deeper, I just mentioned that my business partner, actually a co-founder of the agency, he also passed away suddenly. Just one day he was gone. It was a heart attack at the age of 35.
Yeah.
So it's just unbelievable. Sometimes we have to go through all of these ups and downs, right? But it's just so inspiring to see that you were able to go through that, and you've made it and you exited the company. So we don't really need to go through all of these 12 check boxes, right? That would be probably overkill for people who are listening to this podcast. But if you were to choose, let's say, one most surprising that probably people often overlook, which one would it be?
Okay, so I'll just do 2 or 3 for you. I mean, if anyone's interested, we have a guide, free. There's no catch. We don't then email loads of things on top of it. You just contact me on LinkedIn or email me and I'll send it to you. It's no big deal, but it's worth having because if your company doesn't tick these boxes, and some of them are intrinsic, so if they don't, they never will, you can't sell. You've got to build a profit and lifestyle business. So the first one is a net profit over £1 million. So an EBIT value of £1 million at least, because that puts you on into a different zone. People pick you up then, they're interested then because they want that £1 million as part of their profits. So that's a really important one. That makes you attractive. Having a balanced client estate, so not just dependence on 2 or 3 big clients, or not having loads of small little clients. You need a proper balanced client estate. Another one is you don't have reliance on key people, and that's really important. Too many agencies succeed because of specific people in those businesses, not least of which the owners. If the owners weren't there, the business wouldn't function. And when they do the due diligence, the buyers, they look to see where the work comes from, and they look to see the relationships with clients. And if they see too much dependence on people, particularly shareholders who are going to get a load of money and leave, they're less likely to spend the money, or they put restrictions on the sellers, the shareholders, after the sale, so they have to stay longer and achieve more before they get their money. So it's not an ideal situation. So my view is, quite frankly, is to understand whether your business is likely to sell, and if it isn't, build a proper profit and lifestyle business, which is a different style of recruitment business. If it is, go for it. Go for it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And just this $1 million or pounds or euros in profit, it's a great goal or target
Yeah,
to strive
it
for.
is. It is. It's easier in some types of recruitment than it is with others, for sure. And it's not hard and fast. It's just that in the UK, I think there's about 33,000 recruitment companies, I think. And last year, I think it was about 104 that were sold. The year before that, it was 102. And the year before that, it was 47. So clearly, not a lot of businesses are ticking those boxes. It's not easy to do it. And the EBIT, the net profit, is one of those that it's kind of difficult not only to reach but to sustain. You can't just bubble and say, "Oh, look, we've got 1 million, but next year we're going to do 850,000." No. You've got to get a steady growth so that they can look forward and think that this trajectory of profit is going to continue. It's not just going to drop down. Why would they spend money on something that's effectively fresh air, really? Well, they wouldn't. So it is important to figure that out. But the guide should do it for you if you take it from me.
Wonderful. And there are different types of recruiting agencies. Some of them do the outstaffing, some of them go for permanent placements. So based on your experience now working with all of these clients, which ones would you say is the most likely to help you
White
reach?
collar contract every day, all day long, white collar contract. Because if you just perm, you're reinventing your business to start every month. You've got to start again. And if you want to grow, you've got to do what you did last month plus some more. It's really hard. Whereas with contract, particularly contract with good quality clients, when you place somebody, it's on somebody that's already there. And they have extensions, obviously, to a contract. So you get contracts extended and new contracts come in. And it's much easier as well to sell with contract because you can build up relationships with your contractors, which can generate revenue, can generate new clients, can make it easy for you to fulfill requirements, particularly if you're niche, which you can't do in perm anywhere near as much. So white collar contract, 100%.
The permanent placement could be easier probably to accumulate the cash flow quickly. No, that often recruiters are tempted by the commissions that they can earn.
Yeah,
So,
we really didn't pay commission as such. Really, we had a kind of a bonus, a team and individual bonus on a quarterly basis. I'm not a big fan of commission schemes really, but essentially, yeah, you with contract, there's a cash flow issue. But if there are enough companies out there now that can help you with that, so it's not really an issue. And even with perm now, you can get factored permanent invoices, which was a new thing. You couldn't do that in the old days, so you can now. So really, the flow of money shouldn't be a problem, provided you keep your handle on debt. That's really important for contract, particularly debtor days and invoices which are going over those debtor days was important, and also margin, because if your margin's not high enough, it's not enough to cover the portion of the finance that you have to find yourself, and that can cause you difficulties. So it's really important to do that. Other than that, it's a license to print money, really.
It's interesting how you say it. And a lot of the recruiters who join our academy and they would like to build a business such as this, they may wonder what kind of commission or the margin to apply on the rate, right? Often they would like to go for the lower amount. So what would you recommend? Would you suggest to go for the higher end
Yeah,
margin or?
sure, yeah. Oh yeah, well, for starters, if you're a commodity provider, let's say that if you're a commodity provider, so it's bums on seats, it's stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap, blue collar temps or low level placements, £4,000 or £5,000, €4,000 or €5,000 fees. That's a nasty place to be. It's very competitive. You probably haven't got the time or effort to build proper relationships with people because the fees are too small. You've got to nail them, get them in and move on. Chances are it's going to be all contingent work, which is disastrous, really. In the UK, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but in the UK, on average, 1 in 5 contingent um, vacancies are filled by an agency. I mean, somebody fills them, but if you're an agent and you're working on contingent fees, you work all week, but you just get paid for Friday because you get 1 in 5. Oh, what's all that about, really? I tell you what you want to do if you want to make a lot of money, right? Shed loads of money in recruitment. You focus on one thing. How can you lift your revenues but keep your costs the same? That is the secret to wealth in recruitment because too many people see growth as well. I'll just hire some more consultants. Well, that's great, but you're lifting your cost base. And the chances are your cost base will grow at a different percentage, a higher percentage than your profit. So gradually become less and less profitable, weirdly, as you grow like that. If you have an obsession with measuring and improving the amount of profit that you make per person, and the best way to do that is lift revenues but keep costs the same, then you become more and more profitable. And let's put it this way. Supposing you added 20% to your revenues. Right? Instead of getting paid for just Fridays, now you get paid for Thursdays and Fridays. 20% increase, right? 80% of that extra increase, because there's no extra costs associated with it, will go straight to the bottom line. That little bit of difference is more commission that you have to pay if you pay commission. Other than that, all that extra money, straight to the bottom line. It's all about profit when you're running recruitment businesses. It's about profit, profit, profit. It's not turnover. It's not revenues. It's not number of placements. It's not the number of offices, the number of people you employ. None of those things are relevant. Profit, net profit, not GP, net profit is your focus. You should be obsessed with it and the things that you need to do to increase it and improve it, because that's the way you grow £1 million business.
And just to clarify now, when you say don't increase the consultants, are you referring to recruiting consultants who work in the agency, or are you referring to the people who you have outsourced?
Salespeople, recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hire recruiters if you're going to grow. You can't do it all on your own. But there's this natural belief: I'll just get more revenue by hiring more consultants or more recruiters.
Yeah,
and that's true to a certain extent. But one of the measurements that you can use, which prevents this, what they call a scissor company. And if you're listening to this, you're not going to be able to see it, but if you can see it on video, it's my fingers are up like a pair of scissors. The top one is turnover. Turnover goes up, profit comes down. Very common. If you look at, so Harvey Nash, who bought my second company, I got their figures out, and I think I take this from memory, so hopefully I'll get this right. I think their turnover revenues are about £650 million, and they made a net profit of £9 million, which isn't particularly good, really, in the great scheme of things. Our revenues were £24 million, and we made just over £2 million profit. So we made a quarter of the profit of them.
Wow.
On a 1/12 of the revenues. So that's why they wanted us. And how did they become so unprofitable? I tell you, 1 month at a time, one hire at a time. So what you should do is measure for every pound or euro of salary and commission, so basically staff costs, for every pound or euro that you spend on that, how many pennies or cents of profit do you make? And what you'll find is when you hire people, obviously, the pennies of profit drop for every pound or euro of salary you're spending. So your job is, when you hire someone, is to get it straight back up again. And don't hire another person until you've got it back up. Or if you hire two people at once because you think one of them's going to go, which is fine, they go, and then you get your pence profit back up. And that simple ratio will stop you from becoming a scissor company.
Interesting. So you also mentioned we should focus on the consultants for the higher rate. So you said the 5,000 per month. That's the like not the really good place to be at, as I understood. So
Well,
what
here's an
should
interesting
strive
thing.
for?
Here's an interesting thing, right? We did a project for one of our clients. We worked out the return on investment based on time. So how much time do the consultants spend? Because you can translate time into money, obviously.
Mhm.
How much time does a consultant spend filling roles? And in this particular case, they had a senior consultant who did search work, really, about 15 to 20,000 pound fees. And they had a young lady, and she'd got an arrangement with two clients. She provided exactly the same kind of people. They were low-level people. And they basically sent the vacancies through on email, and she just filled them. She just was really focused on that little area. And her fees, her placements were about £4,500, I think. We worked out that she was massively more profitable than the search consultant, because the contribution that she made, contribution is just direct costs subtracted away from fees. The contribution that she made was significantly higher than the contribution made by the search consultant. So I think my answer would be is to figure out what makes the most money in your organization. Figure it out. Measure how much effort and time it takes to turn a vacancy into a fee, and how many vacancies do you work on that never turn into a fee. Figure that out and gradually move yourself towards kind of roles where you get paid more often, you convert more of those vacancies into fees, your conversion rate is higher, and the fee represents the amount of effort that you put in.
And that would be
no easy way of doing this, Mike. It's about data. It's about understanding the data that's going on in your business, capturing all the activities that go on your CRM system and ATS system, and then being able to analyze that data to make the right decisions. And if you do that, then you'll convert more of your effort into money, which is what it's all about, really.
Interesting that you say it, because we have placed about 100 professionals, IT professionals, most of them on the permanent contingent basis. But as you say, it's not really the best place to be at. So we would like to shift also to.
Well, if you want to shift from contingent, then you certainly have to be in a space where either exclusive or retained is at least accepted, if not normal. People accept it. If you were trying to convince somebody to do it for, I don't know, a factory worker on a £4,000 fee, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Right? It's not going to happen in a million years. The further you go up the value chain, the more you can make a justification to move away from contingent towards exclusive, which is my favorite, or go up to retained, if you will. But I think that this is a really key point now. I'm never very sure whether I communicate this properly or not, but let me give it a go. Most of the reasons that hiring managers don't want to do exclusive or retained is that they have a belief, which is false, that is solely to the benefit of the recruiter. There's no benefit to them. There's obviously much more benefit if they've got 10 agencies working a role than if they've got one. Of course, that's not true. But it's our job to educate them, to make them see that it is significantly more advantageous for them to use one agency who does a proper job and gets paid for the work that they do than it is to use 10 agencies or go in, blast a few things out on LinkedIn, take a quick look at the job boards, do what they can, and then move on to the next vacancy, because they know they're only going to place 1 in 5. So they know they've got to get that activity going to make the money. So once you educate the client, and I don't mean in a condescending or supercilious way, I mean properly, let me explain why to you having an exclusive relationship or a retained relationship actually is better for you, because you'll get a better choice of candidates, wider choice of candidates, and now you'll have the time to properly qualify them. So the shortlist will be better quality, and you've only got one communication line all the way through. So So I think it's more control, better quality of candidates, and more candidates. And if you can prove how that works, which you can, if you understand retained and exclusive well enough, then I think the clients, some of them will begin to see it.
Wonderful,
And they're
wonderful.
more likely to do it.
This also comes back to the importance of building the relationships, which we also discussed prior to starting this podcast. So, how can actually someone who is just starting in recruiting, how they can even get an opportunity to explain the advantages of exclusive search, how they can build such relationship with prospective clients?
Well, two things to say before we start. The first thing is not every hiring manager wants to form a relationship with a recruiter. Some of them just like to keep that relationship at arm's length. It's a personal decision, or it's a company decision that the company have said, no, you can't socialize with people. You can only deal through email or whatever. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. If you're a relationship-driven business, so your strength is to build relationships and then leverage those relationships to get work, then those type of clients are no use to you and you need to move on, because your strength, your superpower, is not going to be used. Okay, so that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is that relationships take time, and one of the things that scuppers them early on or damages them is the perceived belief by the buyer, the client, that you want to make money out of them, which of course that's what it's there for. You know, you're not making friends with them to invite them around for Christmas. You know, you want to make money out of them. But I think there's accepting that and then there's shoving it down people's throats. So there's a difference between tactical BD, which is all about money. It's about, I've got this great candidate, can I send them over to you? Or have you got a vacancy I can work on? Well, I've just seen this advert, so I know you've got a vacancy, can I have it? Whatever. It's very transactional. It's here and now. Timing is everything, right? That does not lend itself to building relationships at all. Strategic business development, and we have a video on this. We can explain this go to my YouTube channel. We have a video that explains the difference in great detail between tactical and strategic BD. Strategic BD is not about timing. It's basically saying, here, we have a flavor of recruitment. This is the way we do things here. And if it matches your tastes, then eventually we'll do some business together. It might be 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. I don't know when. But my job today is just to make sure that we are aligned in the things that we think are important, the way in which we work, the results that we get, the way in which we charge, and then we wait. Relationships are about waiting, adding value, building confidence, building rapport in layers, bit by bit. Every interaction that you have with them, telephone call, visit, email, whatever, adds a layer to the relationship bridge. And when that bridge is strong enough, and there's an opportunity, they will let you walk across and get it. All right, but you can see there's a massive difference. Most recruiters are transactional. They want a deal now, particularly 360s. I'm not a big fan of 360s, and so they want a deal because they get paid at the end of the month and they've got to get the business in, and that's what they're about. They're not interested in a relationship that could pay dividends next year or later in this year. That's not what they're about. So what we need to do is separate those two out and recognize that strategic business development may or may not give you revenue in the short term. It can do. You can literally make a phone call and get a piece of work. But if there's no work there, then it's not the end of the story, which it is for tactical business developers. They're on to the next, and on to the next, and on to the next. This is about saying, well, okay, I think we've established that the way in which we work is to your liking. So I think we'll just wait now. Let's keep in touch. Let's build that relationship. And when an opportunity comes for us to work together, then I shall take it. That's very different. So you've got to find people who are willing to build relationships, and then your approach has to be relationship driven, not transactionally driven.
Well, this must also be hard to do as a, just the job of a recruiter is difficult itself, right? And to mix it with business development and even think about strategic and tactical.
Okay, so a balance is important, obviously, when you run a business. If you're a recruiter, especially if you're a solopreneur, then a lot of your time is spent filling vacancies. That's where you make your money. You fill a vacancy, you make some money. Some of the time is spent working on the governance of your business, doing the accounts, chasing the debts, getting the invoices out, and so on. Some of that must be aligned to strategic BD. So from the get-go, from day one, you need 100 high-value clients. The names of people, not the companies. 100 people. There could be over 100 clients or 60, 70 clients, whatever, companies. But you need 100, and you are going to continually try every 2 or 3 months to start a conversation with them using a different approach every single time. So you're not just going to keep cold calling them, because if it didn't work once, it's not going to work again, right? So that's not the way to do it. But there are lots of ways that you can start conversations with people. And if you keep trying them, eventually one of them will work. When you get that conversation, you're effectively getting on the stage, like an audition. And they're like saying, well, okay, what have you got then? And if you haven't got anything, all of that has been wasted. That's where your product comes in. You must have a very compelling product. It's called a flavor these days. So your flavor of recruitment is very compelling and different and distinctive. Not just the little things that the good, better, and best they talk about in productization. We've moved on from that significantly now. This is a full flavor. Everything about you and the way in which you work and your people work, is this to your liking or not? And that's where you present that. And then 3 things will happen. They're not interested. Well, fine. That's okay. On to the next. We take them out of the 100 and we put someone else in. They want to buy, which is about 4 or 5%. So then you've got to close them. Or there's a thing called the forgotten 45%, which are those people, it's not a no, but it's not a yes at the moment. And it's either not a yes because it's not the right time for them. Maybe their supply lists don't come up for review for the 12 months. Maybe there's no vacancies, who knows? Or the other reason it's not a now at the moment, but it might be in the future, is they like what you're saying, but they're not entirely convinced. They need more time. They need you to push them over the confidence hill and feel confident that actually, yeah, you would be a good addition to our supplier community, and we can see that what you do would be great for the way in which we work. So each of those outcomes has a different approach to it, right? Mm. So if they're not going to buy, well, fine, on to the next. If they're going to buy, close them. The forgotten 45%, called that because transactional recruiters don't care about them. You're not going to make any money now, so I don't care. They must go into what's called a cultivation regime. 3 tiers: scheduled, ad hoc, and a subscription. That basically aims for 26 non-operational interactions a year across email, telephone calls, visits, face-to-face, things through the post, social media. 26 interactions to build a relationship and keep it strong. And some of those people, if you continue to do that, will come on stream, because if they're the ones where it's not the right time, suddenly it will be the right time. If they're the ones that aren't convinced, you will convince them, and they will give you an opportunity. So that none of that works in the traditional 360 transactional model, because it doesn't lend itself to working that way. And that's where the big money is. I mean, potentially 9 times as much money in the forgotten 45 as there is in the 5% looking to buy now, ignored. We talk about increasing revenues, but not increasing costs. Well, making the most of that forgotten 45% is one of the ways that you can do that.
Well, I'm sure I have also a lot of prospects on the list of forgotten 45. So I'll need to revisit it after we finish. That's awesome tip. And now, people may wonder, okay, how do I even create this list of 100 prospects? Should I just
easiest thing in the world? I mean, you can outsource it to India if you want to, or wherever you outsource abroad, they'll do market mapping for you. You can do that. You can get it from candidate and contractor CVs, which is what we used to do, because when we did it in the 90s, there was no LinkedIn, there was no job boards, none of that existed. So we had to take it from the CVs. We would look at the CVs and see where people had worked, and then we would follow it up to see whether they took contractors or were IBM mainframe or whatever, which is what we did. You can talk to your candidates and see where they've worked. There's lots of ways that you can do it. It's not difficult to do. You can just look on LinkedIn. You can search LinkedIn. How hard can it be? So I don't think that's difficult at all. I think the most difficult bit is starting that conversation by far and away.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should reframe the question, because it's probably even too easy to create the list. But that's the problem, because you may focus on small companies, large companies, funded companies, big corporations? Do you focus on, I don't know, how do you even know what
Okay.
companies hire
Okay. So
contractors?
okay. So well. Okay. Let's start at the beginning, right? So there's a thing called an ideal client profile, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right?
Mhm.
ICP just defines what a ideal or high value client looks like for you. And high value doesn't mean to say big. In fact, most big companies are not high value because they place a lot of people with them. They have a lot of recruitment for them, but they want it at a really low rate. Nasty, so we don't want to be doing that. Unless we're niche suppliers, in which case that's completely different because we're selling our niche supplyship almost as a consultancy, not as another agency. So we don't have to be bound by the same terms and conditions that the agencies are bound. But an ideal client has two levels, if you will. So one is just generic. So they have the kind of vacancies that you can fulfill relatively easily, right? It's your hot spot, your warm spot there, right? Sweet spot was what I was scrabbling for, right? They have more than one vacancy a year. They have several vacancies, but not too many that puts them onto the big money radar that the big agencies will go for with the low margins, but enough. You can deal with somebody, the hiring managers. You can talk to them, you can build a relationship with them, you can get to know them, right? Which is kind of important. They're happy to pay you a decent rate for what it is you're going to do for them. They listen to the value proposition that you have and they like it. They buy on value, they don't buy on just purely on price. And lastly, when you make a mistake and drop the baton, which we all do from time to time, they work with you to pick it up. They don't wait until your backside's showing and kick you up it with their big boots. So that's a generic, all high value clients really have that in common. And then you have to put on top of that what's relevant to you. So things like company size, location, sector, how they buy their recruitment. Is it through a PSL, a portal? Is it an informal PSL? Is it a free for all? I don't know really, but you decide what's best for you. So at least now you've got a set of criteria that every time you look at a client, you can grade those against. Now, some of that data you can get from LinkedIn or the internet. Some of it you can only get by talking to people and understanding a little bit about them. But I'd say, even if it takes you 3 months to build that list up of looking at people, investigating them, talking to people that have worked there, or if you're taking it from people's CVs, it's very simple to ring someone up and say, "Here, I see you worked at ABC Limited 3 years ago. Could I just ask you a couple of questions about that?" Yeah, sure, yeah. Even if you're in a job, it doesn't matter. You can still ring them, and you can do a little bit of research, so you can understand, broadly speaking, what type of company they are, good enough to target them. Because you're not going to do business with the hot 100, all of them. You're not going to do it. If you did, you'd be overwhelmed. You'd go bankrupt because you couldn't handle it all, right? So your service levels would plummet. So you're not going to do business with all of them. You just want 2 or 3 of them. So if there's any full starters in there, it doesn't matter. It's okay. It's cool because we'd realise they're not for us. We take them out and replace them with somebody else. So don't get too precious, too particular about that 100. It's as good as we can do, and we're going to start processing them. And as we process them, we'll realize whether they're a good prospect for us or a bad prospect for us. It's cool.
Interesting. And if you look at the list of the companies you've been consulting for, the 100 plus, do they specialize in some specific niche? Like, is that something you would recommend to do? Or
we don't really do blue collar and temp. That's not our bag really. So they're all not. I mean, that's not true. We got some in there that were, as we were learning what we were good at and what we were less good at. I think we realised that, white collar, perm or contract or search, they're the ones we can have the biggest effect on because the fees are bigger for our clients, and so therefore they've got more money to spend on the kind of things that they need to do, which isn't particularly expensive, but they need to invest in a bit of marketing and a bit of software here and there, to make things work. Whereas if people don't make a lot of money, then they've got nothing to invest, nothing to spend. It's very hard then to make a difference. So no, just across all sectors too, really, and many countries. We're an international business, so we've got clients in Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore, several places in Europe, North America, South America, Canada. So it doesn't really matter. What matters really is the people that are building these businesses are open to change. They're not wedded to the old way that they've always done things. They want to do something new. They're fed up of what they're getting from their business, because as a business owner, you aim to achieve four things, do you not? Income, freedom, choice, and wealth. That's what every business owner wants. We want income to spend now to fuel the lifestyle that we want. We want the freedom to work or not work, so have plenty of free time that we can use to spend the money in. Choice, when we go to work, we choose what we do. We don't have to do things that we're not very good at or we don't like. But ultimately, at some point in the future, we've got enough personal wealth to be able to say, do you know what? I've had enough. I'm taking a back seat, or I'm leaving, retiring. I don't care whether I sell or not, because I'm worth enough money now. All business owners want those four things.
Yeah.
You can actually specify them all. You can write them all down. And those people that we work with are unhappy with one or more of those four things, and they don't know how to change it. They've tried a few things, but it really hasn't worked out. So they come to us to make it happen for them. And so it's less to do with the specific type of company and more to do with the mentality and the position that the business owners are in and what they want to achieve.
That's totally my case, by the way, as well. These four elements that you enumerated.
Yeah.
I totally
It's the
agree.
same, and the one that escapes most people is wealth, because there's this assumption that we'll build and sell one day. Normally, hey, build and sell in 5 years. Not going to happen. Not going to happen in a million years, right? And some people will never sell. The average, I don't know whether you've come across this rule of 3, 4, and 8, but on average now, it takes 3 years to establish a viable business. So making money, you've got clients, you've got a couple of people, you've got some processes, you've got some cash in the bank, great. Takes another 4 years on top of that to make it so the business doesn't need you on a day-to-day basis. So if you weren't there for 3 months, that would be bad for the business. But if you take 3, 4 weeks off, it doesn't really make any difference. Business will function perfectly well. And then 8 years to make yourself wealthy, to have reached a level of profitability that you can suck great chunks of profit out of your business every year and invest it privately in whatever works for you, really. And I think that if people just admitted that actually a scale for sale, build and sell business model isn't for them, which is why we produce this guide to tell them, then the next obvious thing is a profit and lifestyle business, which is completely different. The emphasis on profit, not on growth. Growth is very expensive. You hire people that don't work out. You spend money on various marketing initiatives that don't give you a return. Spending all this money and it's coming out your profits. In a profit and lifestyle business, it's about making as much money as you can and working as least as you can. Right? That's the focus of it. So it's structured in a different way. But one of the benefits of it is you can severely maximize the profits that you make. I mean, 3 or 4 times what you're getting before sometimes. Got case studies. In fact, there's one, if you go on the YouTube channel, Matt Ellis is interviewed. Quite a big company, I think he had about 40, 50 people. And he trebled his profits, and they were quite large to start off with. But that comes from a real focus on a profit and lifestyle type of business. And that changes everything, because eventually, each year, you become more and more wealthy because you take money out and invest it. And eventually you're wealthy enough. And if you sell your business after that, happy days, a slightly bigger villa in the south of France. That's all that means.
Oh, wow, that's just so inspiring. So inspiring. And I guess the way to achieve those higher profits is not the permanent placement, as you said, but rather the outsourcing, or
We have a video on that. You can go on the YouTube channel. If I send you these links, maybe you could put them into the
definitely. That's a
comments on
great
this.
idea.
I'll try and remember all the different links. Or when you're listening to this later, if you tell me, I'll send the links through to you. But there's 10 ways you can do it, and I list them all out in the show on the video. You can just
Awesome.
you can do it. But basically, it's things like, for example, let's give you some examples for some of the most common ones. It's lifting your fees, obviously, because if you lift your fees, then there's no extra cost at all. You just make more money, and the vast majority of that extra goes straight to the bottom line. It's getting paid more for the work that you do. So if you just lifted your placement from 1 in 5 to 1 in 4, which is a 20% increase, like I said, the vast majority of that extra revenue straight to the bottom line because there's no extra cost. So it's about being more efficient and having a better choice of the kind of things that you work on. But there are other things as well you can do. Use certain software. I'm not a huge fan of software and automation. I mean, I think it has its place for definite. My background is IT. Originally, I took a degree in computer science, so I get IT. But if people are over automate, they're actually doing themselves a lot of harm. It's not as efficient as you might think. Because let's face it, ask yourself this: if you get an email and you know it's an automated email yourself, someone emails you from a list somewhere, or you're part of some sort of funnel thing, how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? It doesn't make you feel special. It doesn't make you feel likely to engage. And okay, if they're offering something that nobody else is offering, and you think, oh wow, I'll have a look at that then, right? But if they're just offering recruitment like everybody else is offering, I don't think so. The more you automate and the less customized your approach is, the less successful they will be.
And this actually reminds me something quite important. A lot of the CTOs and IT managers I'm in touch with regarding the recruiting services, they tell me, hey, I receive all these emails from companies from India or Asian countries or even European countries as well, right? So, and they all start with, do you need IT people? We have these IT people.
Because they're all transactional. I'll tell you, if you're interested, again, you have to join this. It's a free area that we have, but you have to subscribe to. It's free, right? But we did an interview with the HR director of a big English company called Computer Center, which is 4 or 5 billion euros business across Europe. It works, and he was also HR director from one of the Volkswagen companies and for Land Security's Landsec in London, big land business property company. And he came on the show with the head of accounts for Jaguar Land Rover. They both came on the show, and the purpose of the show is how can small businesses do business with big businesses. That was the theme of the show. And he was talking about this, and he said, well, if somebody wants to get to speak to me, then they've either got to send me a piece of content that I've never seen before, and that's massively useful for me. Well, you could do that. Or they've got to send me an invitation to an event at a really nice venue with a really good speaker. And I don't have to be the most senior person in that room. There are going to be more important people in that room than me. If you do that and I'm free, I will come. So the point of saying that, I think, is that there's always a way that you can start a conversation if you understand the target market that you're going for. There's always a way that you can do that. And once you can start a conversation, if you've got a strong enough product, if you're productizing, which most recruitment companies don't do, they sell themselves, basically. It's like, well, it's me, buy from me, because I've got all these years' experience, and I've got this big network, and I do this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth, right? And look at me, I'm the guy you need to buy from me. Well, that's not scalable. And if that person leaves, the revenue stream goes with them. If you're selling a product, you can train people who've got average skills and experience to still deliver great results because the client is buying the product, not the person selling the product. Doesn't sound like a big difference. It's a massive difference, really, between those two. So if you can start a conversation, you've got a strong product, and you're not transactional, it's harder to fail than it is to succeed, in my opinion.
It's very, very interesting that you mentioned the product within the service industry, and it just reminds me that I was discussing with my colleague that once we, go meet some clients, I want to hold something in my hands as something really tangible, like the product that you mentioned. So,
well, there's a thing now called a two-dimensional pitching deck, and it's where the product sits, but it also contains the framework in the way in which that product is pitched. So you get a standardization in pitching, really. But it's two-dimensional because traditional pitching, whether you use a PowerPoint deck or not, starts at the top and goes through. And whether you like it or not, Mr. Client, you're getting it all, right? All the way through. With a two-dimensional pitching deck, you have a spine, 6, 7 screens or whatever, with some key information in. And then you basically hyperlink out from that page to other pages and back again, according to what the client wants. So I might say to you, I might have a screen on values, and I'll say, well, values to us are rules. They're very important, and we monitor them. Are values important to you? And you might say, well, they are, as a matter of fact. I'll say, let me show you then. Click out to a value screen and explain what the values are, and then provide proof that those values are true. We actually live to those values. Well, you might say, no, not really, not interested. Well, I won't show you all of that then. That's fine. So the product is defined in the two-dimensional pitching deck, and it varies according to what the clients want. So whatever the client is interested in, then you can then major on that to dig deep. The second thing you should be aware of in the modern world is that previously in pitching, the deal was you did your pitch in person on the telephone, these days over a Teams call, whatever. And at the end, you say, look, if you're interested, I've got some case studies here, or I've got some testimonials, or I can put you through to a couple of my clients. You can speak to them on the telephone or whatever. But that proof, that credibility, that proof is quite generic. The modern way of doing it is to make a claim in your pitch and then prove it. And then make another claim and prove it. So you basically got layers of credibility building up. And what happens is the client finishes the pitch and they believe pretty much everything that you've said because you've proved it as you've gone. It's massively more powerful than the traditional whack them through and then say, hey, you've got these case studies, which no one really cares about anyway. So I think that the product is really defined on the pitching deck, from which, if you want, you can put together a PDF, or you can put it on your website. You can do all of those things. But really what matters is when you present it to the client, you're presenting a product, a flavor of recruitment, rather than just why me, which is pretty lame ass, really, isn't it?
But when you say product, are you referring to the pitch deck, or are you referring to, let's say, a specific talent pool or some consultants that the business has in the books?
The pitching deck contains everything that defines the product. It's very difficult for me to explain this without showing you, because we've got sample pitching decks that we show and then people can see what it is. But it's essentially, if you think about it, before a client is going to hire you, there are certain questions that they want to answer in their heads. And then they want proof that the answers you've given them are true. Obviously, if you go and buy a car, then you've got certain questions in your head, and they vary. It could be, for you, it could be mileage, how efficient it is. That's important. For me, it could be the green credentials. For my wife, it's how quick it goes, right? So you're going to go with these questions in your head, and then you want them answered, really. Well, that's what the pitching deck's supposed to do, or the pitch generally, supposed to answer those questions and then provide proof that what you've just said is true. So don't think of a product as being this sort of fixed thing that looks pretty. It doesn't matter. It's there to answer questions, and the best way to do it is in a deck. That's the best way, and vary what you talk about according to what the client is interested in. It's very effective. It's the modern way of doing it now in the UK. That's what we're doing, and it's a really effective way of doing it.
Awesome. Well, if we could also include some of these examples in the show notes, that would be awesome. I'll follow up later. I also want to be mindful of your time. You have some other meeting booked in a few minutes, but I could listen to what you say for the next 2 or 3 hours probably.
Very nice of you. Thank you. Well, if you're keen to do that, go to our YouTube channel and you can listen to me. I think there's over 100 shows there now, so there's a lot of time you can binge with if you're interested.
That will be a long weekend, but I'm looking forward to that. Awesome. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you would like to refer to the audience?
No, really. I mean, I think we have lots of ways people can engage with us. There's our YouTube channel. There's our show every 2 weeks that we do a different show, mostly for owners of recruitment firms, solopreneurs upwards. We have most people engage with us, the smaller businesses. We have an online growth program, which the starting point, the entry point is £167 a month with no minimum sign-up period, so people stay with us as long as they want. We do one day in-person growth summits. We do them in England, Manchester, London and Birmingham. People can come to that. That's not that expensive. So there's lots of ways to engage. If you've made the decision that you're not getting the income, the freedom, the choice and the wealth that you expect and want, you have to do something. And our model is one way that you can do that.
Wonderful. Cool. So thanks for saying and sharing everything with the audience. I'm super excited to go back to work and apply some of the insights that you shared with the audience and me. So thanks again, and I'll include the links in the show notes.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.